I was asked by Dr. Rasmussen to talk a little bit about what I do and try to relate it to, a general audience here at this festival that might be interested in some aspect of the research that I do. So I'm an ethnomusicologist, and I work mostly on traditional and popular music in Mexico and Latin America. But what I decided to do for this festival, for this presentation within the context of this festival, is give a talk about fiddling in the Mexican context, right? So we've heard a lot of fiddle, Cajun, Creole, blues, Texas swing, but the violin is a really, really important instrument in Mexico as well. And so in the United States, we have this distinction between, a violin in a concert hall is a violin, and a violin, at a birthday party or at a dance or, out in the country at a informal get-together, it suddenly becomes a fiddle. In Mexico, that distinction doesn't really exist. It's just all violins, right? But I like the term fiddle because it sort of has this whole vernacular implication. The fiddle is not a highbrow instrument. It's an instrument that represents like popular culture and folk culture. So that's why I try to use that term here. And I know there are a lot of musicians here, a lot of performers, a lot of people who play fiddle around here. And it's a little unfortunate because I know we're bumping up against the same time as the championship at the contest over there. But we'll do what we can. And I also want to thank a lot of my inspiration for doing this work has been taken from the work of people like Paul Anastasio, who's here in the back, who really a pioneer of trying to bring various musical cultures together that are separated by borders and languages and cultures, but that are really part of the same strain. I really try to look at all this stuff as sort of part of a shared cultural wellspring throughout the Americas. So I chose these sort of 6 examples of Mexican fiddling, and I sort of try to tell a slightly different story with each. We're going to go one by one through them, and I picked musical examples as well so that you can sort of hear each one of these styles. I'm not going to go into that much detail about them. I'm really only an expert in maybe 2 of these, but I'm just trying to give a good sort of overview. So, again, a lot of people here might be familiar with old time or bluegrass or western swing or Cajun or Gulf Coast style fiddling traditions from the U.S., and so I'm sort of trying to do a similar overview for some of these Mexican fiddle traditions. So first, I want to talk about the fiddle and its uses in ritual and spiritual contexts. Particularly, I use the example. The fiddle is used across Mexico, across indigenous communities in Latin America as this sort of mechanism for mediating relations between the living and the dead. And so this is found all over Mexico. I picked the Huijarica example as sort of the one to talk about here because I think it's really powerful music where you can really hear the ways in which they use like drones and sort of repeated musical figures to induce like this trance state. This is music that's associated with certain rituals based around life cycles of cactus plants, of magueyes, and also the sort of the long walk to harvest, consume, and process the experience of using peyote. The Huijarica people walk from their current territory, which is in the Sierra of Nayarit and Jalisco, and they walk all the way to the northern central part of the state of San Luis Potosí to collect these psychedelic cactuses, and then they walk all the way back. Nowadays, there's a lot of movement by bus between these 2 places and to sort of reduce the trip, but historically it's been like a 3-week-long trip on foot. And so this violin music accompanies not only sort of the altered state that allows people in this tradition to commune with their ancestors, but it also facilitates all types of sort of life cycle and calendar events such as sort of petitions for rain, petitions for fertility or for death rights, marriage rights, all these kinds of things. And the use of the fiddle in these kinds of sacred contexts is found all over Mexico, all over indigenous Mexico, but this is just the example that I happened to pick for this presentation. So we're going to listen to Daniel Medina, who's a really sort of one of the most globally recognized forebearers of this kind of music, who is really trying to keep it alive. He's one of the, these are pretty historically closed off communities, and so he's one of the few who has done international collaborations with artists and composers, who runs workshops and things like that, but who is still very tied to his role as sort of a ritual musician within the community. So. So this style of music is played on very small, rustic, hand-carved violins that are known throughout Mexico by a variety of names. The most common is rabel, spelled with a V. And this other fiddle tradition that I'm going to talk about now, which is from the Tuxtlas region, of the farthest north extension of tropical hardwood rainforest in the Americas, is the biosphere around the towns of San Andres, Santiago, Tuxtla, and Catemaco. And so these little violins first started to be made in that region as long ago as 400 years. There were several Franciscan and Jesuit missions around there in Tatahuicapan and Pajapan, in Hueyapan, in Olitilapan. And so in those missions, the Franciscans and Jesuits often taught local indigenous craftspeople how to make European-style instruments. And so these sort of grew out of that experience of encounter, but obviously the repertoire that comes to be played on these instruments is really localized. And I think this is a really powerful example of how, in spite of all the violence that people suffer under colonialism, that their culture always finds a way to culture always seeks autonomy, and this is really a powerful example of that. This is a violin that was made in the community of Tezcaltitan in the municipality of San Andres Tuxtla, and it's made of a single piece of wood, of red cedar. The Tuxtlas is, as I mentioned, it's tropical. It's very lush. It's a highland area in a region that's surrounded by plains, and it's very close to the coast. And the Tuxtlas also has a reputation within Mexico for being sort of an epicenter of witchcraft. And a lot of Mexican politicians and sort of power brokers will go to seek out curanderos in that region, right? To offer advice and to help them out with complicated issues in their lives. And so the music that I played with Los Armadillos Tejanos is known as son jarocho, and we're sort of products of this revival movement in son jarocho's recent history, right? People all around the world now play this music. In Sweden, there are groups of son jarocho and all this stuff, but the Tuxtlas is the ancestral home of this music, and the Tuxtlas is also one of many regions where this music has historically been played, but the violin tuxteco, these little violins, are really endemic only and exclusively to Los Tuxtlas. As recently as 20 years ago, if you saw one of these violins at a fandango in Veracruz, you knew that the person came from Los Tuxtlas. And there was sort of a crisis of people not playing this violin anymore. Most of the sort of old guard of violineros passed away, but thanks to the concerted efforts of a handful of musical activists in the region, the violin is coming back in the area, thanks to people like Joel Castellanos and Moises Gallegos and a couple of other people who are really trying to bring back the violin. So let's take a listen to Manuel Castemaca. So that's basically what this thing sounds like, and at the end of this presentation, I invite you all to come up and take a look at it. It's pretty interesting. It's made of a single piece of wood, and it's quite challenging to play, but it has a sort of very powerful, provoking sound that might just sound screechy and out of tune for some people, but I also think it has like an incredible power, and it's like sonic quality that's like nothing else that I've ever heard. So this... Moving from the Tuxtlas region to this other region of Mexico called the Huasteca, that has a variety of musical styles that are endemic to that place. Again, a lot of ritual repertoire associated with the first corn harvest, associated with Day of the Dead, associated with Carnaval, ritual hand washings before marriage or baptism, funerary song cycles, all this kind of stuff. But in the Huasteca also there's this type of secular music called son huasteco or huapango that's really, really centered around the violin. The ensemble that plays this kind of music is a trio, right? So 3 performers. 2 play small, one plays a small guitar-like instrument, another plays a slightly larger guitar-like instrument. They're called jarana, huasteca, and quinta, guitarra quinta. Quinta meaning 5 because it has 5 courses of strings. And then the violin at the center of this music. And I think that the real power of the huasteco violin is its ability to communicate emotion and affect. In son huasteco, there's a huge diversity of sort of there's a huge emotional range within son huasteco as like a musical practice. A major part of the musical practice of son huasteco is what's called trova, or these improvised verses, right, where people will make up a verse about current events, or they'll make fun of their friend who's in the room, or they'll if you're at an event oriented around a person, you'll write verses, maybe of praise for that person, for the occasion, and also depending on how you feel, right? And so within a palomazo, right, this sort of like jam, this son huasteco jam, you could go from verses that contemplate in a very existential and profound way, the meaning of life and the reason for our existence in this world, to sort of double meaning, sort of dirty joke type verses, to verses about love, verses about falling out of love. And there's really, I think that the violin reflects this diversity of verses by sort of, by being able to communicate a lot of different emotional worlds in one run. I picked an example that I think is a pretty powerful example because it goes between minor and major keys. And it's a song that I feel like it sort of begins with a lot of emotional intensity, sort of this dark emotional intensity. And that dark emotional intensity, when it changes to major key, it sort of turns into this bright, angelic kind of emotional change, right? And then it goes back to minor. So it sort of reflects like this sort of ebb and flow of like passion or excitement or creativity as a state that's like not necessarily positive or negative or happy or sad, but that's just sort of on. This is the Huasteca, by the way. It's sort of in this the farthest north extent of Mesoamerica, as they say. This is a multilingual region where a lot of people. It's one of the highest percentages of people who speak a mother tongue, an indigenous language, live in this region of Mexico. Let's listen to Lupita Fajardo, good friend of mine. So that's a little bit of Son Huasteco to liven up your day. So this next example is something that Paul knows a lot about, a lot more than I do. But I chose to include it because there is a whole crop, or there have been a whole crop of fiddlers from the Tierra Caliente region of Michoacán, Guerrero, and a little chunk of Mexico State, who have really embodied this idea of the versatile musician. So in Son Jarocho, for example, we basically only play sones jarochos. We're crazy people, so we play cumbias and norteñas too, but that's only like at 3 a.m. Like we don't really play those at the cultural functions, right? But these guys have been able to integrate this concept within their idea of traditional vernacular music, that a wide range of repertoire belongs within this Terra Calentano fiddle tradition. For instance, I was very surprised when I first started listening to and trying to play this music. I still am not very good at playing this music, but that I was surprised a lot to see a lot of not only gustos and sones, which are sort of the most emblematic traditional styles within this corpus of music, but also swing and foxtrot, as components of the repertoire, all this, music that came out of the United States in the 1940s, and arrived and was tropicalized in Michoacán. Tierra Caliente means hot land. It's very, very, very inescapably hot there. It's really hot. The Huasteca is really hot too. All these places are really hot, actually. Los Tuxtlas is really hot too. But I think that the fact of all these different styles being sort of merged and brought together, and also another thing that was impressive to me, and another thing that was really amazing to me was just the virtuosity of the musicians. I'm going to play an example of Juan Reynoso playing, who is probably the most widely recognized sort of representative of this style of music. He is no longer with us. They referred to him as in sort of an effort to sell more CDs to an American public. I think they tried to market him as the Mexican Paganini, right? This idea of him being really, really virtuosic. And that virtuosity continues to be a value among Calentano violinists who play within this style. There's an elder living musician named Serafín Ibarra, for example, who lives in Morelia, Michoacán, who is probably the most noteworthy living exemplar of this music. And he is extremely virtuosic and dynamic as well. I think there's this idea that traditional music just needs to be hard and fast and loud and crude all the time, which is generally how I like it. But these guys definitely prove that you can have a music that is a traditional vernacular music that also where there's also dynamics and a diversity of style. So we go from one part of Tierra Caliente to another. If we go slightly up the Balsas River, we'll get to the sort of upper Tierra Caliente in the state of Michoacán. And in this region, we have this whole other tradition that's also sort of confusingly known as música calentana, but more specifically, it's known as música planeca from the planicia, from the middle plain of Michoacán. And this music is oriented around the arpa grande, the big harp. This is another style of son where zapateado and improvised verse is really important. And it's the lifeblood of a lot of small town festivities in this region, even to this day. It's one really cool and dynamic thing about Mexico is all over Mexico, in fiestas patronales, public celebrations dedicated to patron saints that sort of resemble, or ferias, which are sort of resemble like state fairs. You'll have representations of regional music styles. I think that this particular style of music really represents something that it represents a component of the community fiesta that, just like food or religious practice or floral arrangements or all these other things, is like an essential part of the fiesta. Like if you don't have the Arpa Grande group playing, then it's not really the fiesta of your patron saint. So we're gonna listen to an example of this music, and this music is pretty interesting too, because even though the harp sort of draws a lot of attention, it's a harp that's played by two people. One person plays the strings and the other person uses the face of the harp as a percussion instrument. This music features two violinists. Typically in this style of music, the violinists are the ones who sing. So if you play violin, they're two-part harmonies oftentimes that only correspond to the violin players. This is something that you see across a lot of different sort of styles of Mexican son, right? Traditional music across Mexico. Like there's another fiddle engaged tradition in Mexico called son arribeño, for example, that we're not going to see today, where it's based around poetry, but only the person who plays the guitarra quinta is allowed to say poetry. So if you want to be a poet, you have to play guitarra quinta. And it's the same thing here, where if you want to sing these very interesting, almost like overtonal vocal harmonies, you have to play violin. So as we see some pretty intense, hard playing there, but also, some pretty serious looking faces, but also a lot of joy and love in that music. And so we're going to round this out by taking a quick listen to some Borderlands fiddle, the U.S.-Mexico border. Contentious place as it has always been, is nonetheless probably one of the greatest incubators of culture in the Americas. I mean, what would we do without flour tortillas and refried beans and Ramon Ayala? I mean, come on, guys. So there's this whole sort of forgotten fiddle style from this region that if y'all like to go to festivals like this, I need to just give a quick little shout out, because I'm talking about violins and I'm about to talk about the U.S.-Mexico border. Y'all need to go to the Festival of Texas Fiddling. This is a festival that takes place once a year, the first weekend of December, in Blanco, Texas, in the beautiful Texas Hill Country. And now we have a semi-permanent fandanguero coalition that's always going to be there. So, and for the foreseeable future. And that's a great festival because it's organized by a good friend of mine, Dan Margulies, who always tries to use the fiddle as a way to sort of bring cultures across a diverse and sometimes contentious state together. And one of the semi-permanent fixtures at this festival is a fantastic fiddler by the name of Belén Escobedo, who grew up, was born in the borderlands. Her family's from Tamaulipas, and she grew up on the south side of San Antonio. And so she plays this repertoire of what she describes as old Tex-Mex music and old sort of music from Tamaulipas that in the 1950s and 60s began to be played more and more on accordion and sort of the whole fiddle component sort of whittled away, along with there used to be a whole substrate of this kind of music called farafara as well that was played with clarinets and sort of these like military marching snares that sort of fell out of favor as well with the rise of accordion-based norteño and conjunto music. But one interesting thing about Belén is that her repertoire is so familiar, because if anyone here has listened to, like, grew up listening to border radio or likes that kind of music, every song that she plays is a song that you'll recognize. But she plays it with this kind of forgotten style, because these are really old songs. You know, a lot of these tunes that were made famous by Los Cadetes or by Los Tigres del Norte or by Carlos and Jose are like these old songs, right? That appear in the historical record, and that she claims that she learned many of these songs from her grandparents. So let's listen to Belén. We'll wrap up by listening to Belén playing Flor de Capomo.
YouTube, right?
YouTube,
Okay,
dale shine.
Hello, everybody out there on YouTube.
Yay!
This is Belén and Ramon
Yay!
offering you our gift from Lupito Acuña. And we're going to play this song because everybody seems to like it. From us and Lupito to you.
So, what is the idea behind sort of looking at all these traditions in sort of at a festival in Louisiana? Well, it's sort of thinking about, well, we're on this stage, and I go back to what I said at the beginning. On this stage, we've been hearing Western swing, we've been hearing Cajun, we've been hearing sort of blues-inflected music, right? And a lot of it features fiddle. And a lot of these musics also feature fiddle, and I think in these times it's a little challenging sometimes to be an advocate for sort of music as a cross-cultural, as a bridge, right? For us to like understand each other and reach across and understand how someone else might live, you know, or how someone else might understand the world, you know. But I think that through the humble fiddle, we can sort of through fiddle music, we can start to think a little bit about how we're more alike than we are different. And that's what we try to do with Son Jarocho here in Austin and Dallas, wherever, is to sort of show a little bit of what we do and use this music as a mechanism to talk about community, and a mechanism to not just talk about community and think about community, but also live it out. And the fandangueros in Austin now has become this site where we have people from all over the world, not just Anglo-American and Mexican-American folks, but also people from all over the Middle East and different parts of Latin America who are coming together and learning together. And, I think through fiddle music, like the Festival of Texas Fiddling does the same thing, And so I think part of thinking about these traditions is thinking about how the parallels that they draw with, similar traditions that we know and love here in Louisiana and that we're used to listening to at these types of festivals, and thinking about how we can use this music as a portal to understand each other and to relate to one another and to reach out. So I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments or anything. Yeah? Anybody? Yeah.
Well, we'd like to thank you.
Thank you.
The
Thank you.